Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a todos. Thank you for joining us. I'm Carolina Chavez, representing South County and Vice Chair of this committee. Our Chair, Jesus Escobar, cannot attend today, and I will lead our meeting. Before we move on, I'd like to ask our clerk, Francesca, to confirm if we have quorum. Francesca?
Thank you, Vice Chair. We do have a quorum today.
Thank you. Also, can you also help us with the logistics for the meeting, please?
Of course, thank you. Please note for this meeting, we will have simultaneous interpretation in English and Spanish. There are interpretation devices at each of the member seats as well as in the lobby for the public. And I'd like to ask our interpreter, Vicky, to briefly explain how the features work.
Good afternoon. I will first give the instructions in English and then in Spanish. To use the interpretation feature, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are, click on the interpretation icon, looks like a globe, and select English as your language, or if you want to have Spanish into English. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, the three dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you are in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, el globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish o español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntitos suspensivos, los tres puntitos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés, en el fondo, por favor, seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de la reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista en el vestíbulo. This concludes the interpretation instructions.
Thank you, and thank you, Francesca. Are there any questions from members regarding meeting procedures? Any questions from the public? Okay, well, now I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we live and work on traditional, ancestral, and unceded land of tribal nations, including the Kumeyaay, Luiseño, Cupeño, Coahuila peoples. Also, we share strong historical and cultural roots that unite us with all of our neighbors. Now, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand if you're able to.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Also, I want to welcome Dawn Vittis, SANDAG CFO. I understand you will share some interesting information to our committee. Please, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Mario is currently out of the office, so I'll be giving our agency report this afternoon. And before we begin, I do want to acknowledge, did she leave? We wanted to acknowledge Tessa Lero, who's been the clerk of the board for quite some time, participating in these meetings, as well as the board meetings. Tess is retiring. Today's her last day in the office. She's been with the agency 18 years, and I'm sorry she's not here right now to receive our acknowledgement, but I wanted to make sure and mention that, you know, she's had quite a distinguished service here at SANDAG, and we really appreciate that. We are in process of hiring a clerk of the board, and Francesca will, as always, continue to do a fabulous job as our deputy clerk of the board. We have, as an agency, been focusing on our internal controls and processes. We've been continuing to build out the program project management office so we can support the oversight, transparency, and focus on fundamentals of delivering the projects that we deliver for the region. I do have a couple of project updates for Otay Mesa East. Earlier this week, we had a great visit with Ken Salazar, the U.S. Ambassador to Mexico, visiting the Otay Mesa East project site and looking at the progress made on the Siempre Viva interchange bridge, which will ultimately support the mobility to and from Otay Mesa East. We appreciate the continued collaboration with the ambassador and our project partners on both sides of the border to deliver this critical project. On the airport transit connection, we've already received a lot of great data from the travel survey. It's going to continue. The airport travel survey will continue until December 2nd. It's going to help us get the information about how residents, visitors, and employees travel to and from the airport. We are also continuing conversations with MTS and the Airport Authority about near-term solutions. So we plan to share more details when the team presents later in December. And we plan to present updates to the airport and MTS boards of directors at the beginning of the year. On our Purple Line project, conceptual planning study is wrapping up. We're starting to present findings to SANDAG's advisory groups, beginning with working groups, and then planning to go to the Transportation Committee and Board of Directors early in the year as well. We're happy to report that last week, staff shared the Regional Vision Zero Action Plan at the Transportation Committee. It was met with a lot of excitement and very well received. It's our first region-wide Vision Zero Action Plan, and it identifies a safety-focused network. And by doing this, it allows all the cities in the county and tribal governments in the region to be eligible for federal grant funding. The team's been meeting regularly with technical staff at all the jurisdictions to provide information and assistance in this regard. So we really look forward to continued momentum to implement this Vision Zero Action Plan. We do have a couple of construction notices this month. The Border to Bayshore Bikeway construction continues. Work in Imperial Beach will begin in early December to add safety and traffic calming features in the community. There's a 3-week intersection closure planned at 14th Street and Grove Avenue. Residents and nearby businesses should expect intermittent noise, traffic control, and detours. And there will additionally be no parking signs in some areas, temporary lane closures and traffic shifts, as well as physical barriers and some guidance signage. We're sharing notices in the community about the upcoming work. And last week we hosted a community meeting in Imperial Beach, had a really good discussion. In the region up in Carlsbad at Pio Pico Drive, there will be a full closure between Chestnut and Palm Avenues, Tuesday, December 3rd, starting at 8 a.m., continuing through Thursday, December 5th at 4 p.m. This is going to allow crews to safely complete roadway paving and some stormwater drainage improvements. Nearby residents and businesses in that area should expect minor travel delays, some construction lights and loud noise. There will be traffic control and flaggers in place to guide travelers in and out of the nearby Chestnut Plaza office building and the Highland Inn. And posted signage will guide people who are looking to access the Carlsbad Library Learning Center. And always, we just thank the public for their patience during these periods of construction. The final announcement is regarding our upcoming office closure. So SANDAG Customer Service Center will be closed to the public next week from Wednesday, November 27th through Friday, November 29th for the holiday week. And the main office here at 401 B Street is actually closed to the public all next week. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you so much for this incredible report. So in the interest, that was actually part of item number 1. In the interest of time, I would like to keep public comments to 1 minute. And do we have any comments from the public at this time, Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. We do. Truth, if you'd like to step up to the podium first, and Truth will be followed by the original draw on Zoom.
All right, you know what it means? I can apply for Tessa's job now. Great. I've come with good news. I want to see this committee dissolved. Most people who are supposed to be here are never here. That's obviously related to the unwise timing of the meetings, but this committee also does not discuss the major issues of the various borders. The only thing that's ever really discussed is how can we help Mexico? It actually makes sense why so many reps don't bother to show up. The city of Imperial Beach has repeatedly been given the shaft by SANDAG at every opportunity to make real change. It must be nice to be Mexico, never have to be accountable. I have a vision zero for sewage. How about that? If SANDAG can ever actually finish a project or get the back office system running without corruption, there may come a day when people find it necessary to protest the opening of the Otay Mesa East toll. PFM financial advisors who worked on OME, their former CEO, Dan Hartman, ironically once worked for wastewater agencies, but coincidentally, they just got a new CEO 2 days ago. But perhaps in the future, Mexican citizens on the task force will agree that a mitigation fund is important for their health too. Then there would be even more unity against SANDAG. Looking forward to it.
Our next speaker will be the original draw, followed by Catherine Rhodes.
Yeah, you guys should actually be dismantled because you sit here and you say the border's secure, all while we know it isn't, and you want to do business with Mexico, so that's all you care about. You don't care about the humanitarian crisis that is happening on the border. In fact, by your idea of wanting open borders, you are complicit in the fact that hundreds of thousands of children have gone missing, admittedly by our own government and people like you that sit on a dais and don't even care to really address the issue. You want to talk about commerce and different things, but we should really be getting down to the fact that children are being raped right now, ones that have come across the border unaccompanied, that we think that, you know, there's no problem with that, right? And Congress just had a hearing on that about the trafficking of children, but just like you guys, all of that information falls upon deaf ears, which makes you complicit because you are aware of what is actually going on. You're doing nothing to stop it, and all you care about is business. So if you have a child, maybe you should look at them and say, you know what, you don't matter. If you told me that you were raped, it wouldn't really matter because we care about money more than you.
Our next speaker will be Catherine Rhodes, and Catherine will be our final speaker on this item.
Wonderful. This is Catherine Rhodes. And again, I'm asking because I'm going to be going to every meeting of SANDAG that I can and ask for a meeting again so I could talk about my seismic issues. But since we're here in the Border Committee, I just kind of wanted to remind you all that this is something I learned of when I was doing stuff for the Powerlink project that was around, is that the United States actually has a 60-foot right-of-way utility corridor, which the border fence is on. That means that the United States government owns a 60-foot path throughout California, Arizona, and New Mexico, but not in Texas. And so for that area, we can really put anything we want to on that area. And so what I'm thinking that you should do is put housing on that, especially for the thousands of Border Patrol agents that you're going to get with President Trump.
Thank you. Your time has expired, and that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. At this point on the agenda, I want to take the opportunity to acknowledge that November is National Native American Heritage Month in the United States. This is very important because it reminds us of and celebrates the values, traditions, and contributions that Native people have made to the formation of our country. But it also reminds us that we have come a long way, but we still have a long way to go together. Now, before we move to the consent agenda, I want to ask if there is any update, any comment from the members of this committee. Seeing none, let's go into item 2. Is a consent item, approval of the meeting minutes, and it requires actions to move forward. I can make the motion to approve our consent item on the agenda. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Perfect. Thank you. So I guess I'm asking for the votes.
We do have public comment on this item. If we
Oh,
could take that
sorry
first.
about that. Let's go to public comment.
Thank you. Truth will be first, followed by the original draw.
It's all right. Carolina's not usually the chair. She can make mistakes. I could pretend this is the county and I could take up all the 60 seconds. Just slow words, but I'm not going to do. Is Mitch McKay really an Imperial County rep? Because I don't think he is. Pretty sure he lives in Imperial Beach within San Diego County and is the alternate for South County, AKA Mitch and Louis Plancarte of Imperial County have their names mixed up in the minutes of attendance. Thank you.
Thank you for that correction. The original draw, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Yeah, it's sad because it's like you do want to skip by the public because you don't really care what the public has to say, which is so sad because you should be making your decisions, and that is your job to make decisions based on what the public has to say. So it's very telling when, you kind of just forget that they exist and are a part of that, though granted, many times people don't show up. But as far as the minutes go and what I was saying in the last meeting on the 27th, you guys need to be bringing forward items that have to do with what's actually happening on the border, the crisis that is happening that you are helping facilitate. And if you have anything to do with the border, you should be talking about what is happening legitly on the border, not just the commerce and all of the business that you want to do outside of that, all while saying that the border is secure. You should be addressing the fact that unaccompanied children are coming across our border, right where you guys want to do all your work. And you should be addressing the fact that they go missing and trying to find out what happens to them and where the problem lies, and the fact that we are allowing this to happen in our own county, yet ignoring it.
That concludes the public comments on this item.
Thank you. Francesca, can you please call for the vote?
Yes, thank you. For South County, Vice Chair Chavez.
Yes.
For East County, Councilmember Koval.
Yes.
The City of San Diego is absent. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Anderson.
Here.
Imperial County is absent, as well as North County Coastal. And for North County Inland, Councilmember Garcia.
Yes.
And that motion does pass unanimously with those members present.
Thank you. Now I would like to ask if any Borders Committee member has a comment. Please let us know or raise your hand if you want to speak. Seeing none. Okay, moving on. Our next item is the Indian Energy Zero Emissions Vehicle Ring, and I want to welcome Omar Peralta, Indian Energy, Craig Rater Madaus. I'm sorry if I chopped. Madaush, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so the title, as I mentioned, of their presentation today is Indian Energy Zero Emissions Vehicle Ring. And I remember that in June of last year, you presented a great project, the microgrid long life energy storage project in Viejas. So the floor is yours. There you go.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chavez. I'd like to thank the committee for allowing us this time here. I'd like to thank Hector Venegas again for your support, and Sherman Escobar, who's not here. Also like to thank him for his support. And at the same time, I'd like to thank our families, the Cadro family, Peralta family, Ryder family, and our team in Mexico. Rancho Las Aelitas, Carlos Espinosa, the Amarado family, Tom, Mary, Joseph Amarado, Angelo Rodriguez, and of course the tribes, Yaqui Nation, Seti Nation, my brother Gabriel, Chief Rafa from the Papagos, Raymond Valenzuela out there. We're with you, Raymond, with the Mayo tribe. Wadi Ruben, keep doing the great works. We're right there with you. And also the University of, for their support of Sonora Campus San Luis, Jorge Quiroz. Thank you for everything that you do. And in Mexico City, to the shout out to the Confederation of National Confederation of Agricultural and Rural and Marginalized Communities, and their president, Milton Rasgado, Ramphis Flores, Jose Bujanda, Raul Quiroz. Thank you for all your support. And I'd also like to thank the person in the specialty that was a visionary for energy, clean energy in the region, specifically for the La Rumorosa, and that is my father, Lino Peralta, who is right here present. Happy birthday, Dad. And hopefully this is a part of your vision and I'm going to now turn to our CEO of Indian Energy, Alan Cadro.
Language, and thank you to the committee for allowing us to have this opportunity here to speak into what we think is a pretty exciting opportunity for multiple different entities. Nukazit Ode Ing Nadijin Akas, the soft-hearted one I'm called by. My given name is Alan George Cadro. And as Omar has stated, I'm the CEO and founder of Indian Energy. Indian Energy is a microgrid engineering development firm that is 100% owned by tribal either nations and or individuals. And we're excited. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to my daughter, Nicole Ryder.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having us. I think we. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's right there.
Oh, is it? Sorry. Oh, no. Sorry. Okay. So like I said, my name is Nicole Ryder. I'm a proud member of the Sault Ste. Marie tribe of Chippewa Indians. I am the VP of Development and Tribal Liaison for Indian Energy. My background is in electrical engineering, and today, through our presentation, we're going to cover the ZEV ring objectives and benefits. We're going to talk about economic growth and ZEV adoption in the region. We're going to talk about cross-border relations for manufacturing and goods movement, as well as the challenges and next steps moving forward. This slide gives an overview of the Indian Energy Group, and as we explained, the Indian Energy company is 100% native owned, focused on supporting our indigenous communities and the Department of Defense in achieving independence through energy sovereignty. We also have Mataush, which is our Native American owned distribution, logistics, and maintenance company, which is responsible for all of the procurement of the equipment that is purchased for our projects, as well as the long-term operations and maintenance associated with those projects. Next, we have Indian Power, which is run by Omar Peralta, which is our Native American and indigenous-owned energy development arm in Mexico. And finally, we have our Indian Energy ZEV Centers, which is our Native and tribal joint venture, which we will be discussing today. We also have listed our key development partners, which we have been working with over the past year on this vision, which includes the Center of Sustainable Energy, the American Indian Chamber of Commerce of California, Michelle Holliday and Associates, as well as Kit Cole Consulting. And now I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Craig Ryder, who runs Mataush.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you to the Borders Committee for allowing us to present. I am Craig Ryder. I'm a Chief Sustainability Officer of the Indian Energy Group and General Manager of Mataush. I have 25 years in the energy industry, and I specialize in sustainability, and I'm a professor of sustainability at the University of Southern California. Okay, sorry. Okay, so the Indian Energy ZEV ring is what we're here to talk about today and give our progress update from when we presented last year. The ZEV ring is a native and tribally owned joint venture, which focuses on providing transport and distribution companies with fast charging electric and hydrogen refueling options for medium and heavy duty transport. It also provides additional services for customers while they're waiting, including telecommuting and other mobile services that we'll go into here more in the slide. The ZEV rings will also provide hydrogen production as well as distribution throughout the entire network. The system will be primarily served through renewable energy generation and storage, coupled with utility power to power the ring and be able to provide the power that's needed to charge the vehicles. This really is a social and environmental justice-driven initiative to be able to provide benefits to each of the communities where the ZEV centers will reside, but also together, the ZEV ring provides regional benefits to all of Southern California that are greatly needed and will be discussed here. And over the next 10 years, the goal would be to expand the ZEV ring throughout California and throughout the United States. Okay, so progress since we last presented, we've really been in a deep dive to really understand the industry from end to end, from the manufacturing of the technologies, of the fleets, both on the electric and hydrogen side, as well as understanding the suppliers and the ability for the market to be able to reach the trends, current trends, and the proposed trends over the next 10 to 20 years. Really we've also spent time meeting with the California Energy Commission and the Department of Energy to understand what initiatives are going to be available to help support the ZEV ring. Really what we found out is that everybody's waiting on everybody else for a project of this size. We got the manufacturers waiting on orders to be placed. We have the distribution and transport companies waiting on the infrastructure to be installed, while our governments are doing their best to incentivize the whole process. It really is more of a onesie twosie process that really does not supply the network that's needed to incentivize the adoption of a medium and heavy duty ZEV fleet. And so without that infrastructure there, everyone's just waiting on everyone else. And so the ZEV ring that we're presenting is the reality that is needed in order to make this adoption happen. And really, the last point that I want to make here is that if we continue to wait to provide a public option for ZEV adoption, the Fortune 500 companies are going to do their job in installing it themselves, which is not exactly what we want, because these companies are all trying to do what they've set out to do, which is to help the state meet its goals for emissions reductions and the goals that they've set at the companies to meet their sustainability goals. The problem with it is that if everybody goes in and puts in their own proprietary infrastructure that only their company is allowed to use, we've created a problem for the ability to supply power to all of this infrastructure. Currently, we have challenges with meeting our own infrastructure, our current infrastructure, and if everyone starts putting in their own proprietary systems, it's going to be a disaster. So having publicly available charging and hydrogen refueling is the solution. Okay, I won't go into too much detail on this because I think everybody is brutally aware of how fast the clock is moving towards our committed dates through the federal government and the California government. The biggest thing here to take away from this slide is that if we don't find a way to make a large infrastructure play like is being proposed here with the ZEV ring, the ability to meet these numbers, whether it's the sale of electric vehicles or hydrogen vehicles or the mass reduction in emissions, which, a large primary contributor to our GHG emissions is tailpipe emissions. And so if we don't put in large infrastructure plays like is being proposed here, it's going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to meet these goals. This slide talks about the Department of Energy's deep decarbonization goals. The green dotted circles around them are all the goals that will be met as part of the implementation of the Indian Energy ZEV ring. As you can see, it covers a large portion of the goals for the federal government and all in one infrastructure installation. The ZEV ring, it has end-to-end solutions, meaning that we're going to install the infrastructure to be able to deploy and transport and generate the electricity that is needed to be able to supply the capacity that's needed for the medium and heavy duty transport, as well as the production of hydrogen to be able to supply to the energy, to the ZEV ring for the capacity that's needed for medium and heavy duty hydrogen trucks. And this slide basically breaks out the three various categories for the supply of energy and hydrogen. This is all proposed to be on site on tribal lands with end-to-end solutions for generating on site to be able to provide energy to the electric vehicles, production of hydrogen on site to be able to not only provide hydrogen to the specific location, but then able to transport that hydrogen to other locations along the ZEV ring. And so we want this to be a full life cycle, end-to-end solution to be able to keep emissions down associated with transport, and also to be able to keep costs down associated with the adoption of these new technologies. This, thank you. This is a typical layout of the ZEV ring, which the red line on the right is proposing phase one, which is really a focus on the hydrogen refueling and storage with 5 DC fast charger stations and 5 hydrogen refueling stations, along with light duty options as well. 24-hour, 7-day-a-week operations to be able to meet the needs of the transport industry. Backed by solar generation and energy storage to help be able to meet a balance between what the utility companies can provide and what is needed to be able to make these stations function and be able to meet the current capacity and also the capacity that is moving toward in the future. Phase 1B would be the addition of the hydrogen plants that would happen over the next 1 to 2 years after each site is built and in operations. Each one of these sites takes about 5 to 10 acres, depending on whether or not the hydrogen plant is included. Not every location would include a hydrogen plant. They'd be strategically located throughout the ZEV ring to be able to make sure that hydrogen can be distributed to each one of the locations. This next slide shows an expansion that can include more solar PV and energy storage if the tribe and the reservation has the desire and the availability of land to be able to expand. Also, the ability to expand to data centers, which are in high demand in the region. They are also extremely energy intensive and would require a significant amount of renewable energy to be able to meet those requirements. But those are future expansion phases. Okay, this is the ZEV ring. The red lines on the map show the actual ring that goes throughout, it goes east, west to east on the 10 freeway, down the 95, east to west on the 8 freeway, up the 5 freeway and the 15 freeway, and has a cutover on the 86 through the middle. These are the high traveled, high capacity transport for medium and heavy duty distribution in our region. These are also alternative fuel highways, and they the focus here in the ZV ring is to get the transport from the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, as well as the port of San Diego and the distribution centers and manufacturing facilities in Mexico onto the ZEV ring, out to the multimodal distribution centers, out for deliveries and back, and having the charging available throughout this route to be able to meet the needs, both charging and hydrogen refueling, to be able to meet the needs of that delivery, those delivery requirements. Each one of the Indian Energy ZEV Center logos on the screen represents a ZEV Center throughout the ZEV ring. This next slide shows the build out of phases over the next 10 plus years to be able to, once phase 1 pilot is installed and proven, to be able to show the expansion across our highways across the US and then focus on connecting the interstates. This shows the business structure and how each one of the subsidiaries for the ZEV centers would be structured. Each one would be run as their own subsidiary. So there's providing services to the Indian Energy ZEV centers. Okay, so how the tribes will benefit, and this is really truly the focus of what we're doing here, is a share in the revenues for the entire ZEV parent company, which is a flow up of all of the ZEV subsidiaries that I just mentioned to you. Creates investment opportunities for the tribes to be able to invest in the parent company, to be able to receive larger revenue percentages and distributions for the entire ZEV Center parent company, not only in this phase 1, but also as the phases build out throughout the United States. Significant workforce development opportunities in operations and maintenance, as well as the ability to utilize Native American businesses as part of the supply chain to benefit the ZEV ring. Also, the ability to expand on the current layout for each one of the sites to provide more renewable energy to help benefit the tribes in their current energy consumption or energy demands. So building out the projects to be able to support the tribes in their energy needs. And then lastly, and arguably most important, is to educate and train the youth to be able to develop careers in the energy industry, to be able to support the build out of not only this project, but the needs of the energy industry, but specifically to the ZEV ring. I mean, there are a significant amount of jobs that will be created as a result of this, from electricians and engineers to technicians and an assortment of management positions that certainly the youth of the tribes are more than qualified to be able to support. Okay, Next, I'm going to talk about the stimulation, how to stimulate the economic growth and ZEV adoption in the region. The business model here really, and if you haven't picked up on what I'm saying, is to create a sustainable, modernized fuel station to support the adoption of medium and heavy duty transport. And this really is to create a Native American brand throughout the United States that is focused on promoting the ZEV revolution and to help adopt these technologies and reduce emissions in the United States. To provide end-to-end solutions for commercial sales, supply of power and hydrogen production, and workforce development for Native American tribes and other underserved communities. As you can see from this slide, and as I mentioned before, there are significant job opportunities that can be built that will become available as a result of the ZV ring being planned, engineered, constructed, and then in operations and the whole supply chain development. Here are the opportunities that are available. I've kind of spoke to most of these, but one that is important here is number 9, which is the ability for the ZEV centers to be able to schedule time slots for distribution and transport companies that are on their routes. You know, most companies have specific routes they take and times that they take those routes, and making the ZEV centers available for being able to schedule charging so that, for example, Amazon could pull in from 2 to 2:30 every Tuesday and know that they're going to have a position available to be able to do their charging and then be able to get back on their routes. Next, we're going to talk about the increase in cross-border relations for manufacturing and goods movement. I'm going to pass this back over to Omar to talk.
Thank you, Craig. This is the project that has basically tribes taking charge, where tribes are being proactive in developing these projects. For many generations, you know, our people have been marginalized, where there's not enough farmland in these lands that we reside in. Now with these type of projects, it gives us hope, and it gives us a second chance in a way to try to provide for our families, to give them energy sovereignty, to provide economic sovereignty and social sovereignty for tribes on both sides of the border. Through our work, we have already signed treaties with the 78 tribes of Mexico and their ethnic groups in the development of different projects for different industries that pretty much enhance or gives more value to their lands or their source of work, whether it's in the fishing industry, farming communities, or in this case, in most cases, near the border, is energy generation. Our focus is completely to secure sovereignty for marginalized and rural communities, and also to be a factor in providing the energy required for both areas, for both the U.S. and the Mexican side. Because for us, you know, the border, we didn't cross borders, the borders crossed us. You know, we want to help each other on both sides of the border as the brothers that we are. Next slide. One of the projects that was born here in SANDAG actually quite a few years ago, back in the 90s, was the border crossing for Hakumba. We have tribal villages on both sides that before the 9/11 attacks, you know, they were able to, ended up separating most of those families. This project is essential for the area because it will provide jobs. It will provide the industry. It would provide, it would dignify the region for our people on both sides of the border, and it's going to be a huge impact in the growth of the state of California, at least on the East County, San Diego, at the same time on the eastern part of Baja. And the most important thing is that by the tribes on both sides taking action and coming together, we are giving our children a better way of life, a more dignified way of life, but at the same time, without losing our customs and our cultures. And that is very important for us and for the world to know. We're also in favor of keeping it with the Keep It Local program, which is supply chain, to sourcing from the local regional suppliers, and to provide fair and equitable jobs and business opportunities for people in our communities, and to feature local, fresh, and healthy Native American cuisine across the region. So to showcase also our culture to the rest of the world.
Thank you, Omar. Okay, and then our last section here, which is only a couple slides, so we're almost done, is on the challenges and the next steps. Okay, so obviously with the changing geopolitical environment in the United States and abroad, there's a lot of uncertainty as to where we're going to head with energy and the incentives that have been there for the past 4 years. And the current administration has done a good job of getting a lot of the incentives out there to help move the needle for climate change. Regardless of the political environment, this also creates opportunity. And we believe that as long as the incentive is still there to build and to manufacture, to take advantage of the next 4 years to build out the ZEV ring will provide the full opportunity for the region, from the manufacturers of the fleets to the companies that are purchasing the ZEV fleets, to be able to get ready for a full adoption and expansion of ZEV medium and heavy duty vehicles in our region. It really is a build it and we will come brisk model we're looking at. There's about 10% capacity right now of ZEV vehicles. So all of these roadblocks that we've talked about today need to fall in place in order for that capacity to increase. And that capacity needs to increase in order to reduce negative GHG emissions. We need support. We are really, truly asking this committee for support. We have a vision for Indian country. This is not the vision. We certainly do not speak for tribal councils, but this is a vision for Indian country that is going to provide diversified revenue streams, be able to have significant benefits for the region, and as it expands out throughout the United States, will have extensive benefits for the entire United States and help move towards the adoption of ZEV vehicles. But this is not something that Indian Energy can do on its own. We need the support of the governments, both the tribal governments and the non-tribal governments, and the industry to make this happen. This takes time, it takes money, it takes effort. And so we're asking for your continued support and the support of all of the people that are listening to help make this a reality. We have our last slide is what we're looking for in terms of initial investment. We're looking to secure $15 million for the planning and pre-development for all of the ZEV centers that we showed in phase one, to be able to provide all the activities that are shown on there so that we can have meaningful discussions with each of the tribes so that they can understand what the path forward is for their tribe and for the other tribes in the region to be able to take advantage of this opportunity. And so I want to again thank you. We all want to thank you for the time, and we're here to answer any questions.
If I could just make one quick comment, as Craig was just walking through all of those different opportunities, and much has been spoke about the tribal communities and the benefit to tribal communities, but there's a win-win-win here in the sense that on the distribution side and the movement of this product, it benefits the whole region. And I think more importantly, with regards to the benefit of the whole, and I lost track of where I was going with that, but there is mutual, on the deferrals, because these solutions that we're talking about implementing within this network are in many instances behind the meter. And that behind the meter solution relieves the overall grid from energy supply side, which allows energy to then be diverted to non-tribal environments. And so that directly relates to the utility having to defer network upgrades and distribution upgrades. As we build out this infrastructure behind the meter, it's an exciting future, but it is a win-win-win for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And before I move to member comments, Clerk, do you have any public comments?
Thank you, Chair. We do have comment on this item. Truth, if you'd like to step up to the podium, you'll be first, followed by Catherine Rhodes.
With a Cherokee jacket pin, I'm going to say, I get the positives. It's akin to a casino, but it feels like a land acknowledgement or a proclamation, empty. How could there be a new border crossing in Acumbo when Border Patrol can't even manage the current illegal migrant situation? More agents are already going to be needed for the OME toll. And would it be another tolled crossing? If not, why not? Oh, and this too.
Solar panels last for 25 to 30 years, but more than 90% of used solar panels end up in landfills. By 2030, the amount due to be retired would cover about 3,000 football fields.
I like to know how Indians are okay with polluting the environment with lithium batteries and solar panels. And what about all the windmills and battery energy site fires with cancer-causing fumes? Everyone's really going to choose profit over people and planet? Land and people have more value than energy. So I can't support something like this. It sounds great in concept. Yes, make money, have a business, but it shouldn't be a business that actually hurts the planet. I do support, however, the Native American cuisine. Joel, he knows what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be Catherine Rhodes, who'll be followed by the original draw. Catherine, you can go ahead.
Hello, this is Catherine Rhodes, and I also wanted to talk about, I don't support this specifically because of the Hakamba border crossing. There is not a Hakamba border crossing. There wasn't a historical border crossing there. There is no tribal lands in Hakamba. The closest tribal lands is in Campo. And so when you guys try to say that you have like two tribal lands across the border from Hakamba from each other, and you're going to go through this historical crossing on tribal, it literally says the Hakamba border crossing was a historical crossing on tribal lands that was closed for national security reasons after 9/11 terrorist attack. There wasn't. So I don't see how you guys even put this here. And, you know, for me to have all this stuff in the middle of nowhere, in Hakamba doesn't really make any sense. Yes, if it was on the Indian reservation, you know, you should do whatever you'd like to do over there. But for county property or county land or federal.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our next speaker will be the original draw. You can go ahead.
It's sad to be a native and listen to you guys talk about this, especially what you're willing to do to the land and the people just to push this. And you're acting like it's going to increase border relations. Yeah, maybe because you're doing business with Mexico, but it's actually going to decrease the commerce that is able to come across or go anywhere for that matter. And it's funny because it's like the tribal reservations are engaged in trafficking, but you're willing to play in the litter box of the federal and the state and whatever government to potentially have a seat where you haven't had one before. And then I wonder, is this like where you guys could get a payback if you are in control of all of the energy and you're like, screw you for screwing me over, then I can take that from you and leave you guys hanging? And I'm wondering what you're going to plan to do with Trump coming in and at his fact that he wants to end all of the incentives for this type of infrastructure because it's all based off of propaganda, which you are going to be indoctrinating youth into believing what you're saying to be true. But have you talked to any of the truck drivers to see what they want and the fact that you're going to hinder severely their ability to give commerce and be able to do the work that they need to do?
That concludes the public comments on this item.
I want to thank the Indian Energy Zero Emissions Vehicle Ring Company. First of all, I mean, we need to, this is an incredible example of what a regional solution, holistic solutions as a region we're looking at. Being a board member in MTS last year, we realized that the future is going to zero emissions. It's a very good perspective when we're talking about working with other countries where we're not just walking alone, but walking together into this future where we're talking every single day about carbon emissions, when we're talking about every single day and not being dependent on one sole process for vehicles. I can't thank you enough for this presentation. I do have a couple of questions before I open it to the board. Can you share more about the timeline for completing the Southern California pilot program?
So we're looking to secure funds between now and February of next year and do the pre-development phase between February 2025 and August of 2025.
And additionally, I want to follow up with how many facilities are expected to be established here in San Diego County as part of the initial phase?
Just in San Diego County? It's 6, I think. Sorry, I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, 4. 4, depending, and 5 if you were to count the ones on the border.
Perfect. I'm asking these questions because I guess it's a follow-on question on how our Borders Committee can be an asset to these projects, right? I'm going to open it up to my colleagues for questions and then loop back and see how you would vision us being an asset moving forward. If you were to apply for more grants, what would you need from us and what, but I'm going to open up to the rest of the board. Supervisor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Have you reached out to any of the local tribes here? Many of them have a lot of surplus land that they're looking for renewable projects to put on their land. Have you had a chance to speak to any of them? And if so, whom? If you don't, I don't want you to ruin any negotiations by telling me, but if you can, sure, I'd be very interested.
We've spoke to and are in partnership with, well, we've spoke to most of the tribes on the 8 freeway. And Indian Energy is currently in development on the behind the meter microgrid for the Viejas tribe. That's in development, or it's in construction right now.
Thank you.
And I think it's important to note along that same line of thinking is that a big part of the engineering solution, that's why, $15 million isn't much these days. But much of our work that is being done, and to the comment that was mentioned earlier with regards to lithium, the majority of all of our projects are non-lithium related long duration energy storage. So these would be driven by a couple of different technologies that the state of California, in partnership with Indian Energy, is trying to build out. So.
I also wanted to add too, I should have mentioned this in our next steps. We're planning on presenting to the SCTCA in January of next year, and then meeting with each tribe and each tribe's economic development team after we meet with the SCTCA to have further discussions.
Laura Caval from East County.
Yeah, hi. I have two questions. The first one relates to charging. You said it's rapid charging. I know people that have EV vehicles right now have charge anxiety because it takes so long. So what does rapid charging mean in your model?
So these would be 250 kilowatt units that would, depending on the size of the transport, the size of the medium or heavy duty transport, would take around 30 minutes to charge.
Okay. And the data centers that you mentioned, are they data centers large enough to process AI or quantum computing, or just to meet the needs of the tribes, or what are we looking at?
The data center companies we've been talking to, these would be full-scale data centers, not specific for the tribes. I don't know the answer about AI. I mean, I don't think I think it's unavoidable at this point, but these would be like full-scale, like any other data center you would find in Silicon Valley.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other board member comments? Questions? No. And I just want to, I mentioned this initially, so we have information that by 2029 is when the CEBs, the buses, will be sold in the state. They have until 2040 for full conversion of the fleet for MTS. Like I said, this is the future, right? We're making progress here, and what this Borders Committee is trying to acknowledge and elevate when these presentations is that the importance of working together as a region, right? Zero emissions, we have to comply. It's coming, it's progress, we can't stop it. So at the end of the day, let us know how the Borders Committee can be an asset to helping you achieve these goals for the better of the community. And if there's no more comments or questions, I think I'm gonna thank you in advance for everything, and go ahead.
Well, yeah, the Borders Committee is definitely that's why we're here. Your support is something that we definitely need, because this is a cross-border initiative. We do have the largest border crossing in the world, right across here in Tijuana and San Diego, and more it's getting more congested. Okay, as the years go by, Ensenada Port is already filled up. There's a near-shoring invasion happening on the border side, on the Mexican side. There's already an energy crisis. There's a water crisis. And all of these projects are essential, first, of course, to reduce the carbon footprint, to reduce and to support this new industry invasion that is coming, this nearshoring into the borderlands of Mexico to be near the United States when it comes to for commerce reasons. So this ZEV ring is coming right about the right time to support and alleviate the grid power, and at the same time give infrastructure. This is a project with purpose. It's not a project that without vision. It was carefully crafted, and I congratulate Craig Ryder for being the architect of it. But yeah, your support is essential in this on both sides. of the border.
And just for the committee's situational awareness, Indian Power holds a presidential border permit to be able to move of these assets to and from the United States back to Mexico and Mexico back. That presidential permit is 9 years into a 27-year duration, but that is all in place.
So talking in the background here, I would love to refer this presentation to the Transportation Committee as well. I think before we present it to the Board of Directors, I would love for them to have a chance to listen to it. I think it's a very important, and maybe I can make this referral to Don Batiste, our SANDAG CFO. What do you think, Don?
Yeah, I would be happy to discuss this with the chair of the Transportation Committee and look to get this on an agenda for the Transportation Committee. I also do want to mention this morning at our board meeting, I did discuss in relation to another program, right, that SANDAG is here and we're available for letters of support for projects, grant applications that are consistent with the agency's mission and vision and goals. And so there are some grants. We monitor all of the upcoming grant opportunities. One that we've seen recently that we wanted to refer back out to the tribes in particular is from the California Energy Commission. Interstate 8, 905, State Route 11 are corridors that are identified as eligible corridors for some grants that are coming out through the California Energy Commission with, I think, filing deadlines in January or so.
Okay.
Oh, December. Oh, my goodness. I thought I saw a January date and the deadline. I apologize. I know it's rather fast, but, please do reach out for letters of support for work that's consistent with the SANDAG vision.
And before we
Well, thank you.
finish with this presentation, I know Jose Marquez from Caltrans is in the back there. If you could just touch base with him, I think there's a value in having these in-depth conversations with them as well.
I'd just like to add one more thing. Give a thanks to Jorge Barona, Raul Morales, and Mario Diaz. The one thing to add is that on the Mexican side, Ejido Jacome, Ejido Baja California, Ejido Nueva Colonia Hindú, El Encinal, the property on the state of Baja California for the border crossing in Jacumba, just to add, has already been donated to the Mexican government on that side. So that is a project that is still in place to connect the port of Ensenada through the corridor of Ojos Negros all the way up to the Jacumi region. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for this great presentation. We can go on and on for hours talking about this. It's a very exciting project. Unfortunately, we do have to stay on schedule because everyone has long meetings still ahead of them. Thank you so much for this presentation, and we'll see you back soon.
Jimmy Gwich, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 4, Border Climate Adaptation and Environmental Justice Plan. We're going to invite Kim Smith and Zach Hernandez from SANDAG. Welcome, Kim and Zach. And Antoinette as well joining us. Appreciate the effort, Antoinette.
Hobbling along.
Thank you again, and the floor is yours.
Okay, I just wanted to make a few quick remarks before we hand the presentation over to the team, but a little bit of background information. In July, the SANDAG Board of Directors directed staff to establish a temporary working group to address environmental concerns, including but not limited to transborder sewage issues in the border region. And transborder flow of sewage is obviously a very serious environmental justice issue, but it is only one of the environmental justice issues that the residents of South Bay and our region face. There's air quality impacts, particulate matter, the ongoing sedimentation, litter, a number of environmental justice issues. And these issues are only expected to get worse with the population growth in the border region. So in response, SANDAG is recommending a two-prong approach to address these issues and the direction from the board. The first is to advocate for additional funding at the state and federal level and to include this in our legislative platform. And our executive committee discussed this at their last meeting a couple of weeks ago. In terms of funding, to date, the International Wastewater and Boundary Commission has received $415 million to repair and expand the International Treatment Plant, but at least another $200 million more is needed. The good news, or potential good news, is on Monday, November 18th, the White House sent Congress an emergency supplement funding request that included $310 million to address the sewage pollution in the Tijuana River Valley. There's no guarantee this will go through, but if it does, then it would fully fund the current rehabilitation of the International Wastewater Treatment Plant. The second part of our recommendation is to develop a comprehensive and a holistic plan to address the environmental issues along the border region, including sewage and pollution. In our conversation with all of the government agencies and stakeholders who are involved in environmental justice in the border region, everyone is asking for one plan. It doesn't exist today for environmental issues along the border. We do have the Border Master Plan that is transportation infrastructure projects, and that was led by Caltrans and the state of Baja California, ultimately adopted by the FHWA, but that doesn't include environmental projects. So today, the SANDAG board accepted $3 million in grant funds from Caltrans so that we can now develop a border climate adaptation and environmental justice plan to fill this gap. And it could ultimately perhaps become an addendum to the Border Master Plan. This work will be guided by a new work group, a new task force, and I think the charter is included in the staff report today. But I'm going to hand it over to Kim so she can talk a bit about the scope of the grant project, the schedule, and the makeup of the work group. And then this body would be our policy advisory committee that the work group would report into.
Thanks, Antoinette. Yeah, I'm actually going to kick it off and then pass it to Kim to give the good stuff. But thanks again to the Borders Committee. Good afternoon. Again, I'm Zach Hernandez. I'm here with my colleague, Kim Smith. We're here to provide a little bit of information on an upcoming effort for developing a border climate adaptation environmental justice plan, all of which Antoinette just described. But again, it's one part of SANDAG's multi-phase approach to addressing environmental issues along the border. And just for context, I mean, this group well knows that we and the other 7.3 million people who call San Diego and Imperial and Baja California, the Cali Baja mega region home, are very fortunate to do so. We share a very dynamic region, very integrated. We have shared economies, populations, some of the most diverse natural ecosystems you can find anywhere. But although we're a very dynamic region and there's a lot to celebrate, we're not immune to environmental hazards, both that are naturally occurring and those that are made worse by human activity. And as you see in the photos, we already endure severe storms, flooding, wildfires, and extreme heat waves. And on a daily level, the border region communities are impacted by polluted air and water, which often disproportionately impact vulnerable communities. And in many such cases, a lack of comprehensive, coordinated planning to get ahead of these issues leads to or has contributed to the challenges that we face. And as we talked about, the board recently urged SANDAG to get more involved and to help address the environmental health crisis facing our South Bay and border populations, not just transborder sewage, but other environmental fronts as well. All of which, like Antoinette described, are going to get worse with climate change, as we know. So in response to that request, SANDAG coordinated with Caltrans on a grant proposal that allows us in the border region to comprehensively plan and coordinate to get ahead of climate adaptation issues and environmental justice issues in the border region. So this plan or this platform, I think I prefer to say, would not just be starting from scratch or in a silo, not by any means. It'd be building on many, many years of prior and ongoing work led by border region community leaders, public agencies, stakeholders, nonprofits, and the list goes on. On screen is just a tiny, tiny fraction of some of the work, working groups, local initiatives, programs, projects that already exist. That are all working towards common environmental goals on these issues. We recognize there's a lot of overlap already. By no means do we want to reinvent the wheel or duplicate efforts, quite the opposite, in fact. The plan would act as kind of a platform to pull all this existing work together under one umbrella, find out how the border region can come together to better support what's already being done, identify ways to partner on new strategies, maybe things we haven't thought about yet, and identify ways to build on towards more coordinated action on environmental issues. We already do this. The region does this really well through the Border Master Plan for Transportation. This would be an attempt to do the same kind of thing for environmental issues. So now I'm going to pass it to Kim to talk about our approach for developing the work.
Thank you, Zach. So just as Zach mentioned, like the 2021 Baja California Border Master Plan, which prioritizes, coordinates, and plans the delivery of our transportation projects at the border, this plan will provide the same approach, a comprehensive regional lens to prioritizing environmental and climate adaptation issues within our border region. There we go. The plan will focus on the communities 10 miles to the north and south of the border from the Pacific Ocean east to the California-Arizona border. And you can see on the slide above, this outlines the specific components of our plan. Essentially, the plan would act as a platform to pull all this existing work together, find out how the border region can come together to better support what's already being done, identify ways to partner on new strategies, and build towards more coordinated action on environmental issues. So what are the outcomes of this plan? What can we anticipate? It would be one location that summarizes the work currently being done, the gaps and challenges that exist. It would build consensus around a list of prioritized strategies, programs, policies, and projects among binational public agencies and non-governmental organizations. This would give us the resource to advocate for these projects in the region when opportunities for funding come along, such as the renegotiation of the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement or potential funding opportunities through NADBank. And finally, and most importantly, it would maintain and strengthen binational coordination on climate and environmental justice issues affecting our border region. To support this effort, we are proposing that policy guidance for the plan be provided by the Borders Committee with technical support from the project development team and a newly created Border Environmental Task Force. We feel this structure will provide additional flexibility for binational participation by allowing for remote meeting attendance, and meetings hosted in other locations. The project development team will include SANDAG, Caltrans, who will be administering the grant, the Southern California Area of Governments for the work in Imperial County, and the state of Baja California. The new Border Environmental Task Force, shown in green, would consist of binational representatives from federal, state, local, and tribal governments. For examples, the cities of Imperial Beach, Coronado, Chula Vista, the County of San Diego, the Port of San Diego, could include the US EPA, IBWC, and other academia, nonprofits, NGOs, community-based organizations, and organizations from the private sector. So for more information on the task force, please refer to the draft task force charter in attachment 1 of your report. In addition, as mentioned previously, so much of this plan will consist with working with existing working groups or environmental groups, forums, and task forces such as those listed above. Now, moving on to our anticipated timeline. So as you heard from Antoinette today, we did receive board approval for the fiscal year budget amendment and acceptance of this grant. So we are ready to start work. In early 2025, we are going to be convening the first meeting of the Border Environmental Task Force and beginning our stakeholder and community engagement. Then in spring and summer, this will consist of compiling all the existing information, identifying those gaps, climate and environmental justice vulnerabilities, as well as developing metrics criteria for the analysis. The bulk of 2026 will be dedicated to the development of those climate adaptation strategies and the list of projects, programs, and plans, with a draft plan being presented to the Borders Committee and the SANDAG Board near the end of the year. Then in April of 2027, we'll be wrapping up the grant, and that's when we can anticipate a final plan. So what are our next steps? Well, now that we've received approval, SANDAG staff is going to begin work with our project development team to form the task force. We again anticipate holding the first meeting in February, March of 2025. I think our first action items that we clearly heard from the board of directors today was to discuss the water quality issues, have some early action items. What are the projects that exist? What are the current efforts that are out there, the challenges and the gaps? Then we're going to move forward and continue to identify the existing groups, the existing projects, the efforts collecting data and identifying gaps for other environmental impacts occurring along the border. And then finally, developing a public participation and stakeholder outreach plan. We will be coming back to this committee for policy guidance, recommendations, and updates as we develop that plan. So that concludes our presentation today, and we'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for this great presentation. And before we open it up to the board members' comments, can we please go to public comments?
Thank you, Chair. We do have public comment. Truth, if you'd like to step up to the podium first, and Truth will be followed by the original draw.
Why is there going to be increased growth of the border? Oh yeah, the OME toll basically given Mexico billions to expand. Still no to this entire task force, especially no to the EPA with a very long history of environmental failures. In 2001, the EPA told everybody that the asbestos-ridden World Trade Center towers dust was safe to breathe, and then everybody got cancer. From the EPA's Border 2025 goals and objectives, quote, Goal 1, reduce the number of vehicles that do not comply with emission standards. By 2025, at least 50% compliance in 2 or more Mexican states. Reduce emissions from freight. Goal 2, improve water quality. Carry out treatment works in the Tijuana River. Reduce discharges of untreated wastewater. Reduce the levels of trash. Goal 3, reduce illegal dumping. Promote a high level of environmental protection through compliance and enforcement, end quote. They failed every goal since the 1980s, and SANDAG has done nothing for the polluting Mexican cars. Real change is going to come from sanctioning Mexico through all means necessary, not asking them, demanding, having it in writing. Don't say, oh, well, it'll happen. No, it's not. No, it's not. It never has. It's not going to.
Our next speaker will be the original draw, who'll be followed by Blair Beekman.
I love how you guys are saying it's an industry invasion. It's so funny. And it's funny to think that you guys are ever going to do anything with the climate to, mitigate what's happening when it's actually man that's doing it intentionally to the people. And like, why would you want to, really keep Mexico in check and be like, you can't be doing these things? Because they're helping the United States with the human trafficking and the child trafficking that is taking place. It's a business, just like all of this stuff. So when you guys talk about even commerce coming across the border, I'm like, yeah, let's just bring more humans, so that we can have all these children be raped and all of these things. As long as they're coming across the border, we can't, disturb our relationship with Mexico. Why would we want to do that? So all the things that you guys are saying is all propaganda, because you don't care about the people. You don't care about the environment. You don't care about making things easier for people. You want to make it hard and worship a climate god that is literally going to enslave everybody. Like, you think that bringing in any kind of infrastructure that's going to give you green energy, it's going to give you slave energy, and period.
Our final speaker on this item will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman. It's really nice to hear original DRA. I haven't heard her in public comment time for a while. Good to hear her voice. I don't fully agree with things she says, but it's nice to hear her around again. For myself, I'm really interested that you're starting this committee. It's going to be, an oversight process involving both sides of the border. It's good to hear you're going to have dialogue and conversation. I was asking that you guys should be at some next steps in cooperation and negotiation of things at this time, and this seems like a really important thing to do to facilitate that. I'm really interested in the future of tech accountability, and Mexico has a really important goal in tech accountability and working with their public. It can be a good facilitation tool to talk about tech accountability issues with your environmental things. I'm interested how bringing those things together can bring a positiveness and constructive ideas. Good luck in those efforts to bring these to all.
Thank you. Your time expired, and that concludes the public comments.
I'm going to now open it to board member comments. Please, East County. Laura.
Kova. I just wanted to offer my a suggestion of an agency or agency type to include, and that would be, if you haven't already, water districts. We have 26 agencies in San Diego County, and I mentioned a while ago, many meetings ago, that the very first wastewater treatment plant in the nation was actually in East County. So they're very well versed in a problem you're trying to solve.
Anyone else? I just want to thank you for this important information. In the morning, we had an opportunity to also address some of these issues at the Board of Directors meeting. I just can't emphasize enough how important. It's not that we don't care about other borders. It's the one that directly impacts us day to day that we try to include in our projects and find holistic solutions, regional projects to work with, right? I encourage everyone here to think moving forward how we can partner up with this, not just economic engine that we have, this multi-billion-dollar neighbor that we work so great together in so many different ways. But I encourage everyone to also think holistically how we can include them with all the projects that they also have brewing and how they can be a resource to us to include in our projects and our plans moving forward. That's what it is about. And that's why we're here, to not think as an island, we're thinking as a region. So thank you so much for this presentation, and thank you for taking the time. And thank you, Antoinette, for hopping over. Okay, so moving on. Item number 5. For item number 5, we have Zach Hernandez and Lizzie Havey. Am I saying that correctly? Havey? From SANDAG will present an overview of the work completed to date for the San Isidro Mobility Hub and the Blue Line Transit-Oriented Development Studies. Zach, good to see you again. And welcome, Lizzie. Please take it away.
Yeah, thanks again. Hello again. Long time no see. Again, Zach Hernandez, planner here at SANDAG, joined by Lizzie Havey, my colleague and fellow planner. We're here to provide updates on multiple efforts that all kind of share a common focus of improving how the region serves our cross-border and South Bay communities, not just with transportation, but also strategizing how we improve the urban context within and around these key stations to maximize the community benefit. But just going to start with the work that we're preparing for to see some changes at the San Isidro station. And just to set a tiny bit of context really quick, today, on any given day, there's over 90,000 people crossing just through the San Isidro port of entry alone, closer to 100,000 on a busy day. And for comparison, the max capacity at Petco Park, which just broke a bunch of attendance records this last Padres season, has a capacity a little bit less than 45,000. So imagine 2 sold-out events happening every single day. That's the volume that we're seeing through San Isidro alone. 20,000 of those 90,000 who are crossing are doing so on foot as pedestrians, 14,000 of them using transit, primarily the Blue Line trolley. And since 1981, when the Blue Line first started running, San Isidro has been the anchor for the regional transportation system, and it still is. But you really wouldn't guess that by being there and seeing what the condition is today and how the station's laid out. Today, it continues to serve as a major workhorse, facilitating our cross-border economy, our shared population, shared workforce, shared student populations, et cetera. But there's a lot of limiting factors that it's fighting against. And just to kind of paint a picture, describe some of those factors and some of those issues. What is it like today? The words that I keep coming back to are hectic, chaotic, definitely very busy, as you can see in the photos. Physically speaking, the station, considering the demand that it facilitates, is incredibly small. It's a really small footprint. Add to that the layout of how the infrastructure is designed. You really have a station that's kind of tripping over itself. You have all these different modes connecting here, but they're overlapping, there's crisscrossing. Add to that all the foot traffic, and it's a really chaotic experience on a day-to-day level. In addition to that, there's a lot of physical disconnects. You could feel when you're down there at the station that it's not really built to handle the foot traffic, and the connections to and from the station aren't designed at a human scale. But to me, at least, one of the biggest deficiencies is the fact that we're out of room to add more transit service. Even if we had more trolley and bus service ready to go tomorrow, there's no space to stage it. And that's a really critical drawback right now. To keep in mind, there's, in addition to the 20,000 people who are crossing on foot, there's an additional 70,000 who are still choosing to cross in their personal vehicles. For a lot of them, the Blue Line trolley isn't really an option, or the local bus route that currently serves the station. Those are not options for them, so they're still using their car to cross. And so while SANDAG has, responsibility to plan for the long-term future, we have an existing system that needs some improvements. So over the last couple of years, SANDAG, MTS, City of San Diego, and Caltrans worked together to plan for more near-term improvements to the existing station out there, the existing San Isidro Transit Center. And through lots of brainstorming, lots of stakeholder meetings, gathering community input, talking to station users, we developed some scenarios for how to get more life, more function out of this really important station. And what we came up with were some station redesign concepts that all provide better human scale connectivity, more physical capacity for transit service, all while trying to accommodate the needs of the federal government and CBP operations, and keeping impacts as minimal as possible so that we can actually turn dirt on these improvements sooner than later. And so we came up with a couple different scenarios, a concept A, a concept B, a concept C. They all achieve the things that you see bulleted on the screen, but just in slightly different ways. A concept A that says you can achieve these things, you can address the challenges that have been out there for a good part of 20 years if you're willing to shift where the trolley platforms are by a couple hundred feet. A concept B that says something very similar. If you shift the trolley platforms a little bit to the east, but this time elevate the station, you can gain additional space for bus service, for trolley service, a bus-only lane, all these great things that I don't have time to get into detail. A concept C that says maybe you don't have to move the trolley to the east, maybe you can elevate the trolley platforms where they are. And so our planning study, screened all of these and developed criteria to look at these from a planning level, document the pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses, their general feasibility. But I think in a general sense, what we found was there are ways to make real impact at the station. Even just something as simple as shifting where the trolley platforms are can unlock much needed space to really transform the station from a connectivity and user experience perspective. So while we advance those things in the near term, we also know there's a need for a long-term vision, not just for the transportation components, but potential development in and around what is already a major hub in terms of foot traffic, but what can be a huge opportunity for a flagship station, a really incredible public space in the future. That's where the San Isidro Mobility Hub work really comes in. Looking towards the long-term future, there's a possibility for even more transportation connections to come along in the future. Some of which are in or will soon be in planning phases and that you'll hear about through staff presentations as the months come on. But in addition to the functional aspects, the rail and the bus connections, how do people actually get to those things? The future hub is going to need a really sophisticated design scheme that is reflective of the binational community, and that's driven by the creativity that we have here in San Diego, Tijuana. And also a development strategy that's inclusive of creative ways to integrate, capitalize on all the commercial development opportunities that come along with bigger, more long-term investments in transportation infrastructure. And so while we get ready to start that long-term planning, community visioning work next year, both the near-term and the long-term planning are going to be marching along in parallel. And they both complement each other. We're really excited to see how these processes kind of unfold. But one important aspect that I've been trying to hint at is the need for a comprehensive strategy around all the future investments, one that includes, the full benefit of a better station by complementing it with land use improvements. And for that, I'm going to turn to Lizzie to talk a little bit about another study that's helping understand more about that.
Thanks, Zach. The Blue Line Transit-Oriented Development Study, or Blue Line TOD study, is building off near-term infrastructure investments while providing a case study for TOD opportunities along the Blue Line trolley. The study will also contribute to the long-term vision of the San Isidro Mobility Hub, helping shape land use consideration, working alongside our stakeholders and cities. Not wanting to plan for transportation projects in a silo, the goal of the study is to plan holistically to maximize benefits of transportation investments through complementary land use strategies. The Blue Line TOD study identifies opportunities for encouraging and creating TOD at and near 2 Blue Line trolley stations in South County, the San Isidro Station in the city of San Diego and the Palomar Transit Center in the city of Chula Vista. The study assesses land use, transportation, and market conditions to inform strategies for TOD implementation that highlight opportunities for potential development, community integration, and mobility improvements. The study will advance regional planning goals and support ongoing parallel efforts in the corridor. Throughout the study, we've worked closely with the stakeholders at the City of San Diego, the City of Chula Vista, and MTS. We're making recommendations to the cities and MTS for proposed improvements to the public realm, land use updates, and policy considerations. Today, I'll be providing an overview going over the process and key takeaways of the study as we're set to wrap up the final report next month. So although I'll be focusing a bit more on San Ysidro in the next slides, Palomar Transit Center also has high ridership numbers, vacant lots, and surface parking surrounded by commercial and residential land uses. SANDAG is currently planning for a number of investments, including a grade separation project and a rapid bus connecting Chula Vista to San Diego State University. Understanding these upcoming investments for Palomar Transit Center, as well as those for San Ysidro, one of our key takeaways includes making recommendations to, again, maximize benefits by leveraging public investment for land use potential and capital improvement projects through informed TOD strategies. Early on in the study, for example, we looked at how the land is currently utilized compared to zoning regulations. So what you see on a scale from dark green to red is that green areas have more capacity to support a greater density than the current conditions. We set out to analyze why and make corresponding recommendations. With initial analysis complete, we then set out to measure opportunity for TOD potential to help us inform our overall report and implementation strategies. While SANDAG doesn't have land use authority, we're working closely with the stakeholders to provide these recommendations and resources. So this task included utilizing a TOD index with scores for subcategories and categories for transit connectivity, walkability, bikeability, development feasibility, and community health and well-being. This provides a score at the parcel level to analyze TOD potential and can be replicated throughout the region. The next steps of the study included outlining specific recommendations for implementation strategies. Here, the slide demonstrates opportunities to leverage publicly owned land to help meet our regional housing goals, while also uplifting other placemaking strategies for land use development. What we learned in this task and through our market analysis is that while we prepare or wait for the market to catch up, public agencies can invest in affordable housing, station, and public realm improvements at large. I would like to emphasize the study helps make recommendations in line with our public outreach, engagement with the business communities of these areas, and in coordination with our cities. The running you see is not only a draft, but conceptual, highlighting highest and best use of the area, but essentially is prototypical, and the market analysis can be applied throughout the study area and the sub-regional level. Next steps include collaborating with stakeholders like city staff and affordable housing developers in coordination with SANDAG's Housing Acceleration Program and some of our ongoing efforts, leveraging the study for the San Ysidro Mobility Hub planning work, and further evaluating options for housing as an opportunity for transportation project mitigation, which includes exploring innovative project delivery models and financing mechanisms at the federal, state, and local level. To zoom out a little bit and talk about all three of these projects, I want to give just a timeline of some of these projects. So for the San Ysidro Transit Center, the planning study wrapped up this year and will be posted online in 2025. We will then move to preliminary engineering in 2025, as well as environmental phase beginning in 2026. And for the long-term vision, the Blue Line TOD study really plays into the broader San Ysidro Mobility Hub work. We are concluding the study again in a month and posting things early 2025. We then will begin the planning study for the long-term vision of the Mobility Hub in the surrounding area. We'll have draft Mobility Hub and land use concepts available for public feedback in 2026, and in 2027, ending that planning study, all while coordinating with stakeholders and doing community engagement. And with that, I give it back to you, Chair, for any questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Lizzie and Zach, for this incredible report. Before I open it to member comments, Clerk, do we have any comments from the public?
Thank you, Chair. First will be Truth, if you'd like to step up to the podium, followed by the original draft.
All right, I got news for you guys. Every trolley station is chaotic. San Ysidro doesn't have nearly as many drug addicts as the downtown stops. This project is another good example of inequity. There are plenty of other trolley stations that need the same type of investment and redesign. The Green Line is the most embarrassing trolley line that exists. It's slow, it's inefficient, the escalators at SDSU rarely work, and the elevators at Granville have been broken for months. MTS and SANDAG have failed ADA obligations. Yet MTS discussed elevators for San Ysidro. That's what I'm talking about. That is not to say that San Ysidro couldn't use some updates, but MTS has already discussed their plans. What's the point of SANDAG's presentations? If a copper shuttle can be gotten away with by MTS, clearly SANDAG doesn't care about what MTS does. SANDAG failed to even include the copper shuttle on slide 9. Goes to show how much you guys don't know. Elevated trolleys are great, but when is any of the system going to be made safe? Doesn't anybody think stabbings and shooting should stop? Just stack it packs to profit off the poor who can't afford to live anywhere else or buy a car. Carolina, better than progress, truth is what you really can't stop. Thank you.
Our next speaker will be the original draw, followed by Blair Beekman.
Oh, I wonder if you guys are considering the CBP one-up crossings that come across every day that are actually in the San Ysidro port of entry, the West Pedestrian Bridge, that they actually close off the ability for people on the U.S. side to go into Mexico up until about 3 p.m. when they decide that they're going to be done processing those applications, which is still an illegal border crossing. But it is interesting when you guys talk about relationships with Mexico, you're literally more willing to and wanting to have a relationship with Mexico than you care about the citizens and the people within our own county, because you're willing to go, we're going to give you all these benefits down there because we need to have a really good relationship with you, all while the other areas in the county are totally suffering. But why would you guys care, right? Because you care more about your relationship with Mexico. So we can do more and more and more human trafficking, and more and more and more children can be raped. Like, in fact, right now, children are being raped. Every orifice of their body is being raped because of this open border policy, this open region that you guys want to have. So good on you for being complicit in treason.
Our final speaker on this item will be Blair Beekman. You can go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman. I know it's a little wonky of myself, but I'm really into tech accountability and what that can do for ourselves. I think the conversations that you'll be having on the San Ysidro transit border issues, there'll be some tech involved. Mexico really has some interesting ideas in tech accountability best practices that I think we can learn from and just definitely exchange, good notes on. And I think overall work towards, we're looking for like constructive steps and ways to have conversations. I think tech accountability is the ways to have those conversations, to constructive conversations. So good luck in the work you can do together on San Ysidro border issues. It's important stuff and ways to have positive conversations. I think tech accountability, good luck in those efforts of what's possible in that field right now. Thank you.
I'm sure that concludes the public commenters.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for all the great comments and our SANDAG staff for this incredible presentation. I do have to emphasize again, from my last year on the board of directors with MTS, I learned that the San Ysidro Blue Line is the most heavily used line in all our county. So it's the most underserved. The trolley carts are ridiculously underserved. We have around 90,000 people that come from southbound to northbound every single day to work legally. U.S. citizens that can't afford to live in the U.S. We have a huge housing crisis here in San Diego. And if we learned anything from the past, is that if we didn't have this workforce to help us out, we would be becoming San Francisco, New York, where people have to have 3 or 4 jobs because the rent they pay is just incredibly high that they can't keep just one job, right? So, and we also need to acknowledge, and this is one of the most, I've been questioning myself and asking, I remember that the last trolley, okay. I remember that the last trolley leaving from downtown, and I've been asked these many questions, crossing through Chula Vista, San Ysidro. The last trolley, I think, leaves at around 11:57, and a lot of people sometimes get off work at 1:30, right? When the restaurants closes, when the bars closes, from the hotels, and we need to be mindful that if the future is cutting down in carbon emissions, we need to be mindful if we want more ridership to have more holistic solutions to the people that are using or needing as a necessity, not as a luxury or because they just want to be, mindful, but as a necessity to use these transportation trolley lines, the bus lines. And I want to refer this to Don Vitisse, our CFO, again, because I think that there's value in exploring the possibility of opening more hours. Why does it have to end at midnight, the trolley, if I know there's many other lines, many other areas in the county that have reported one person, two people, sometimes in these late hours. And if it's a personnel thing, we need to know as a board to see how we can maximize the human personnel, the staff that we have to serve and promote more ridership. Is that something we can refer to you to bring back that information from MTS?
Yeah, we can come back with a presentation with MTS, but I think you'll be glad to hear, we learned recently that MTS is going to be launching a new Border Express route. It'll be a rapid bus route that will go from the port of entry to downtown Santa Fe Depot, I believe, is the terminus of that. And it will work during the hours when the trolley is not able to because it's being utilized by freight service.
When you say Border Express, are you talking about the cross-border express?
No, this is a MTS new service. It hasn't started operating yet, but they're planning to, and it's called the Border Express, I believe, and it will be a bus that will go from the port of entry to downtown during those hours that you're concerned.
The port of entry to the downtown, but how about from downtown to the port of entry?
Well, it'll go back as well.
Perfect. Can you come back to us with that information?
And we're also starting the Blue Line Express study that the board approved funding for. So we'll be coming back with updates on that as well. And that'll be looking at the trolley enhancements, grade separations, anything that we can do to increase capacity and speed up service.
I'm going to thank you so much, Antoinette. That's music to our ears. And thank you for bringing that information back. Can we go to Joe Garcia from North County?
A question for you, just for clarity. When you say the border crossing, you're talking San Ysidro, Otay. What are you talking about?
I believe just San Ysidro port of entry. So it's going to go from it's basically serving the same route that the Blue Line serves during the hours that the Blue Line is not operational.
Okay. And then I have additional questions once we come back for members to ask. May I?
Do you want to do it now?
I can do it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So question or comment, somebody mentioned it in the during their comment, but on our long-term goals, it didn't seem to me that there was discussion about connectivity between CBX and the Blue Line. And at least living in North County, for us, it would be extremely helpful and not even thinking that we have to drive all the way to Otay to drop off people to go into Mexico or to fly out to the airport from the airport, but rather to be able to drop them off anywhere on the trolley line would just make it so much easier if they would have a nice, clear express maybe or something like that. So as you begin to explore long-term, I think that may be something that would be extremely beneficial for the hundreds of thousands of residents in the North County.
I could not agree more with you. The cross-border express is just showing incredible numbers in the millions, sometimes even a little bit more than our border crossings. Just the traffic is incredible. And if we can get some transportation to go all the way into North County, northbound and southbound, that would be incredible. I think that should also be included in the report that we get back.
The regional plan, the 2025 regional plan, which the draft will be released in the spring, does propose service between San Ysidro Port of Entry and CBX. So there's new rapid routes as well as circulator routes that will address that need.
Incredible. If we could get that information in the next, yes. Thank you so much, Antoinette. Anyone else that? Yes, Hector Venegas, please.
Yes, I just wanted to mention that the railway that is used for the trolley serves also for cargo. So that's why it needs to stop at some point to feed some cargo. Some exports into Mexico are using this railway. Thank you.
Yes, we've been hearing that, but I think that part of asking for these studies is to see how we can encourage MTS and all the players and these studies to see how we can find a holistic solution and what solutions can be brought to us. So, but yeah, that's what we've been knowing. Anyone else that wants to comment or have a question? Again, thank you so much to both of you. This is an incredible presentation. San Isidro is just one of the most important, heavily used line. The blue line comes from San Isidro, and I think that there's a value for everyone in exploring new solutions moving forward to see how we can accommodate and promote ridership. Thank you again. Well, thank you to everyone who stayed and stayed here at the board meeting. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank staff, and also in December we're not going to have a meeting, so we'll be reaching out to you to let you know when the next one will be held. Thank you again, and happy Thanksgiving for all of you.